we are here on the Do More podcast. Welcome back. So great to have you with us. Thanks for all the feedback, for following our journey. It's been so exciting. I have with me Nicole Biondi, and we're here to talk about play.
My favorite topic.
It's the best. I think, being in a part of the ECD sector, being passionate about young children, of course, play is a topic that pops up.
Oh, yeah.
Strangely enough, though, we're talking about playful adults today. So stay tuned for that. We always start with a playful check-in. It's part of the culture, and we'll unpack a bit about that today. I'm sure people are wondering, why do these people always check in with play? So we'll chat about that a little bit. My playful question for you today is, thinking back to your childhood, what was your best game?
Oh, I know the answer, but I know I have to wait.
You have to wait. So stay tuned. Cool. So maybe Nicole, you could start just by framing play. I think many people, particularly in a work context, will often say, why are you playing at work? So maybe to frame play from a workplace perspective would be a good place to start.
Yeah, it's as good a place to start as any.
Cool.
So there are many different types of play, and I'm going to avoid for our conversation getting into the very sort of scientific definitions, and I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible and be playful about it.
Nice.
And I think for this conversation, I'm going to stick to two kinds of play. And the first play, so often when you say the word play, people think about free play. And what I mean about free play is pretty much what the name suggests. It's about being playful as a child, being free to do whatever it is you feel like doing, and just
doesn't sound like work to me.
It's exactly right. And free play can be done by yourself or with others, but it is not being done, and this is a big distinction, it is not being done for any other purpose other than just having the very best, most fun time, right?
Amazing.
I know. And
sign me up.
There's what organizational psychologist Adam Grant has termed deliberate play. And deliberate play is being playful, and I'll come back to what I mean by that, with a specific purpose in mind. The way you started this podcast today, and the way you start all of your podcasts, is by being deliberately playful. By starting it in this way, you are allowing the person who you are interviewing to relax into the conversation. Being on a podcast, or being interviewed, or being in front of a camera and a mic, those are very challenging things. By starting in that way, in a playful way, you are lowering I don't want to say the expectations, that's not the right word. You are
inhibition.
It's not even inhibition. I suppose you are lowering inhibitions, but you're lowering the stakes. That's the word I'm looking for. So all of a sudden, yes, it's still a podcast, and yes, there's still a camera. There are probably people going to be on the other side. But because you've introduced play and you've asked me a bit of a silly question almost, you've lowered the stakes, and I'm allowed to be more of myself. That is deliberate play. It's about doing something for a specific reason.
Sure.
And it's about creating an environment where it is safe to experiment and to fail. Free play also does that. It does that as a byproduct of itself.
Sure.
But deliberate play is doing that for that specific reason.
Oh, okay. Still doesn't sound like work. So, break it down for us. Do More has been on a play journey. We wanted to incorporate play into our work culture. What does that mean, really? When businesses, organizations start to say, actually, we want to be more playful. Because we're not being silly. I mean, things are getting done. Sure. I'm saying, people will say, oh, you're being silly, or this is a waste of time. Like, time is money.
Of course.
So, the engine needs to turn.
Yeah.
But why place priority, time and resource on play?
So organizations come to play for different reasons, and I'll name a few of them. So one of the challenges that many organizations face is creating opportunities for the people who work in those organizations to connect in meaningful ways. I'm wanting to use the word authentic, but I'm also not wanting to use the word authentic. So let me use the word meaningful. Sure. And what I mean by meaningful, is being able to connect as human beings being humans versus humans doing at work. One of the natural ways of doing that is to introduce play in the workplace. And I'll give you a very practical example of a playful activity that allows for that to happen. And it's a very simple activity, and Do More Foundation does it beautifully. At the start of many meetings, we do check-ins, or Do More Foundation does check-ins. And simply, well, it depends on what the check-in is. Very often we use a check-in grid. If you haven't seen this, they're available. You can Google it, check-in grid. I love going to Pinterest, and they give you sort of 8 options. One of my favorite is the sheep, and they have sheep who are feeling many different things. And then the question is, welcome to the meeting. Which sheep number are you checking in as today? And maybe I'll check in as sheep number 4, which is the sheep that is feeling a little bit tired, so it's leaning against the barn door. And so, I mean, that's why I giggled when you said silly. Yes, perhaps it is a little bit silly, but what it is allowing is for you or everybody else in the room to quickly understand that actually Nicole's feeling a little bit tired today.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bear that in mind as we move through the day.
Sure. It actually reveals a part of you that you may not have shared at the start of a meeting, which may be quite transactional, or maybe there's an agenda, so we're going through the minutes. And often when people intro themselves, it's, hi, my name is this, I do this. And so a nice way to kind of find out who's in the room and how are they arriving.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'll give you another use case or another problem that play is really good at solving, is about encouraging experimentation. So imagine that we've gone into a meeting where we need to solve a particular problem. Let's say that it's a logistics problem and we've always solved it in the same way. One could introduce a playful exercise to encourage and liberate new thinking. So an exercise that I quite like is called the 6 thinking hats, where each hat has a different color and it has a different attribute. So Jess, for example, if we were in that session together and you are usually the one that always looks on the bright side, I might deliberately give you the black hat. Now, the black hat is only allowed to think in terms of facts and can only bring no emotion, can only bring fact to the conversation. What that's allowing is for other voices to emerge and for you to practice thinking differently.
I get that.
I didn't mean to pigeonhole you into yellow or black.
No problem.
Just an example.
Hat.
So the first point I made was around connection.
Yes.
Meaningful connection as human beings. And the second point is about liberating new thinking in a safe environment. Because if we just walked into that meeting and I said to you, Jess, you know what? You're always thinking so optimistically. I need you to think differently, okay?
Go with the logic.
Maybe you wouldn't feel that comfortable.
Sure. Thanks for the feedback. Sure. I think what's useful about this, particularly from an organizational perspective, is we're often confined to our roles and a certain way of thinking. And even our education background, our culture, gender, kind of puts your headspace into a certain frame of mind. And I think one of these simple activities could unlock and inspire new thinking and challenge people to think beyond their role or their frame of mind. The other thing I've seen happen in the Do More Foundation is flexibility of thought and that openness to innovation and that kind of like brainstorming space of what if or and. Let's do that and. So really building on each other's ideas rather than going, oh, but this, oh, but that. So really being inclusive and open to new and possibilities, which children do so naturally, effortlessly actually, because in an instant a child can be the queen or princess or build an ice palace. As you can tell, my child is 3 and we're deep in the frozen life. But the point is they do it so effortlessly, and yet at work we struggle. Could you share with us some of the barriers that you've seen, even if you just list a few, that you've seen workplaces like really struggle to find their feet with play.
Yeah. And I mean, we started off with it, with just calling play silly.
Yeah, for sure.
Just this label.
Yeah.
It's silly. And like you say, I mean, and it's true. We are at work to do work. That is true. And so there is this, play, no, it's going to make people lazy and they're not going to want to do the work.
Or not take me seriously and I've worked so hard or whatever the case
and I might
may
look
be.
silly and like, what are people going to think? So there is sort of overcoming what is this play thing. The second biggest thing, and in fact I think it is even bigger than the misconception of what play is time and space. So actually creating time to practice play. Because you're quite right when you're describing where the Dumo Foundation's at now and the fact that play is so much a part of the Dumo Foundation's way of being and doing. I mean, even this podcast right now is playful. It started with what if we just tried this, right?
Sometimes it crashes and burns.
Yeah, and it's okay because the Dumo Foundation has made the commitment to try things and fail and learn or succeed and learn, right?
Sure.
But it only got there because the leadership very intentionally created opportunity, space, and permission to try out and try on this play thing. Now that everybody's okay with play, you can easily jump to, okay, there's a new project. I'm going to adopt a playful mindset. And what I mean by that is I'm going to try and think about this very differently.
Yeah.
And so it becomes part of your way of being. But that only happens if permission and space is provided by the organization. And that's so difficult for organizations to do because time is precious.
Yeah. You also don't necessarily need a lot of money to do it.
No.
Like right here on this podcast, we've just asked a question. I didn't need a ball or a toy or a block to do that. Yeah. Sometimes resources are fun, but I think that's also a misconception is like, we need stuff to play. And that's not actually the truth. The truth is around a playful attitude, I think.
Yeah.
And a mindset. So
you're quite right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love that you use the word mindset because once you've made that mindset shift, it's very difficult to become unplayful.
Sure.
or less playful.
I mean, it is quite a commitment. There have been times when even, and I feel quite comfortable being playful. Social workers naturally just fit that mold, I think, because of the way we're trained, actually. But I think there are times when I'm like, should I ask this playful question? Or we're in quite a serious meeting with directors. Am I really going to play right now and ask them the color of their toothbrush? And yet, actually, they really appreciate that. Or, if you were weather today, what would you be? And they actually love to unpack if you were a kitchen appliance. I think we don't realize how refreshing, I think, play can be to those scenarios. So
and I mean the example you just gave is such a beautiful one because I think what it also demonstrates is that as human beings, we literally are built to play. It is just there below the surface, and what does it need? It needs the permission.
Yeah.
And so even though probably for a split second or a few seconds, the people you're inviting to be a kitchen implement, it's interesting that we're in this room, might feel a bit.
Yeah.
But as soon as someone else does it, and just the mere fact that you ask the question, it so easily emerges because it's just there.
It's so true. So this is an invitation to you to embrace the play, find some play, reach out and ask us about our playful organizational culture. I think it's definitely worth some more conversations in the future, but thanks for kind of touching the surface and just getting a little bit deeper into why play. So could you tell us what was your favorite childhood game?
So I was fortunate enough to be brought up in my earliest years by my grandmother, and she had this trunk that she'd hide in her living room, and as soon as I arrived, she'd pull it out of under the wardrobe, and she'd throw it open, and inside would be, probably still is, this range of felt animal. So felt, for those of you who might not know, is a sort of material, and it's quite adhesive, so sort of things stick to each other. So she had a big green sort of felt background, and then all these little things like little yellow ducks and cars and houses, and we played together for hours. And what was wonderful is that we could tell stories. So I'd paste them on different parts of this green felt background, and then we'd tell stories together.
Oh, that's amazing. And again, just showing the beauty of play and transcending age, and just creating meaningful moments between people. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Playtime.